introduce Jon Friend, who's going to tell us something about aspects of integration and how a systems engineering approach is valuable in the context of SLES.
Afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start off by saying complex systems, energy systems, very complex. We need to try and understand a way to reduce that complexity. So reducing that complexity in a system engineering approach is what we took. So next slide, please, Anna. So everyone knows that complex systems, energy systems, have got many moving parts. There's very varying levels of maturity within those systems, which we need to kind of understand and take on board. It's a very moving problem space, really. So what we did within the engineering area, we've looked at developing a framework that looks at extracting those key requirements from various aspects or categories within the integration of energy systems problem space, and pulling them, addressing them, making sure that each one is understood, really. So next slide, please, Anna. So here are the aspects. There's 8 aspects in total. You've got a variety of areas such as technology, operation, people, interoperability, infrastructure, information, commercial, and legislation. So we see that your project, or a project, a SLES project, that touches on each of those various categories or aspects to understand them a little bit more. What tends to happen is you could focus too much on the technology and forget about the people. There's all the people are key to any system, that you want to understand what they want, what they need, and build a system around the people, as opposed to getting the people to adapt to the various technologies. There's also operations, interoperability, information is another important element that we're going to touch on today, which is around the data space. And then you've got commercial, which is again looking at business models, value propositions, what your project needs to accommodate. So we see this as a framework of frameworks that highlights, and it doesn't give you the answers necessarily, but it'll highlight those gaps within your thinking around the energy system. Next slide, please, Anna. So what we've done, we've applied systems thinking as a structured approach, really, to draw upon those areas, those aspects, understand the various issues, risks, and opportunities of the whole energy system. So you're thinking a bit holistically as opposed to focusing on one part of it. You're understanding the boundaries, dependencies, and also that maturity. So around the aspects, we've defined some maturity model that looks at rating that project of the various aspects and looking at the various maturity levels within those aspects. Like any good systems thinking and engineering approach, it follows a life cycle of define, design, develop, and deploy, understanding the various stages at each of those phases. And it's all based around that aspects of integration that's robust, scalable, and reduces risk. Next slide, Anna. So there's various ways that we look at this, where we work with various projects and consortiums, but we provide this framework to understand those integration points within your system, and that provides help to identify if there are risks or if there are gaps. And like I said previously, it's a way to measure that maturity, whether it's full life cycle of your solution or just part of the solution. This will allow us to approach it in a structured system engineering approach. What else it does, and what Eric touched on before, is you've got a collection of groups and various people coming together who've not necessarily worked together, and this aids transparency, aids collaboration and understanding, and also helps with that cross-pollination of information and knowledge across the projects and the consortiums. So next slide, Anna. So aspects of integration, taming the complexity of the system integration. It provides a holistic framework to solve complex problems, helps identify those shortfalls and risks of certain parts of the proposed solution, and understands the maturity roadmap for future development.
Is how did you come up with the different aspects of integration, and are there any aspects you might have missed?
Clearly, that's a question for Jon.
Good. Yeah, good question. We did come up with the aspects. We looked at various other sectors such as defence, aerospace, nuclear, to have a think of what they applied to their systems and their lines of development. So we took it from there, but built on it and made it relevant for the energy sector. So it's taken from good understanding elements of various other areas and industries and brought it forward for the energy sector. Thank you. Great question.
So can I ask a supplementary question, which I probably am not allowed to do, but I will anyway? What was the nature of the tailoring that you? I know we've drawn on the strengths of systems engineering generally, but was there any need to tailor it to any of the specific characteristics of the energy sector, or is there an example where you might have done something, I guess, that was reflecting the specific characteristics not only of the energy world but also the demands of net zero?
Yes, I think a lot of aspects such as technology, people and process are various, as touched on lots of times, but it was more the infrastructure and the commercial elements that we brought into, and also importantly the legislation as well, that is also affected from the energy sector and how that's changing and adapting, and new business models being needed to understand those a little bit deeper. So I think those key infrastructure business models from a commercial sense, and then legislation, are the key ones that we sort of brought into it for making it relevant to the energy sector.